Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today we have from Dream Theater Parasomnia. I feel like I want to be more excited for this project than I am. Mike Portnoy finally rejoining Dream Theater, who remain one of my favorite prog metal bands, where I've given them more chances than they probably deserve. Their darkest album in over a decade, a loosely structured concept project about sleep-related disorders and afflictions. It at least sounded interesting for a band who's over a dozen albums in. So now when checking it out, why do I feel as ambivalent as I do? Because make no mistake, adding Portnoy's slightly more flavorful drum work around the plentiful guitar and keyboard solos, it's certainly a step up, even if Portnoy's not really flexing. And some of the flashier moments, they feel well executed, like the instrumental intro that has some meaty presence before all the synth and guitar solos, or all the warping grind of Dead Asleep to support the sleepwalking murder story with a pretty killer guitar solo. But okay, if you're gonna bring Mike Portnoy back, why the hell did you not let him into the production booth? Because the larger problem behind his departure at the end of the 2000s was how sterile, over-polished, and really compressed the production became, with John Petrucci taking the lead back behind the boards. It might feel heavier now, courtesy of some of the riffs, but it's not like said guitars have much in the way of texture or crunch, alongside the cymbals and the synth accents eventually blurring into this indistinct gauze, and that becomes all the more glaring on an album that is trying to be more dark and can't really sell it beyond defaulting to chunkier rhythms, church bell, the occasional organ, and some very underpowered symphonic touches. For God's sake, A Broken Man, it's about veterans struggling with PTSD, and that's where they put in a bluesy swing breakdown for one of the guitar solos. Or how Bend the Clock is about the nightmare of sleep paralysis, and James LaBrie structured it as a dark power ballad with probably the best hook on the album, and one of the best guitar solos to boot, but still, it doesn't fit the tone. And it's not helped by LaBrie's vocals. I still think he's a good singer, although you can tell he can't quite hit the range that he used to. But on so many of these songs, you can tell he's trying to force a menace that kind of sounds nasal and really utterly unconvincing. And the production is trying to blend him in a way that can obscure some of those weaknesses, add a little bit of warping, weirdness, and attempt to sound a little bit more surreal, punch up some of the backing vocals from the rest of the band with, I gotta be honest, some very questionably metallic mixing. But that also runs at cross purposes for the hooks really exploding off of the vocal line. And look, tighter melodic song structure used to be one of Dream Theater's strengths, and it's a real problem how much these songs just start running together, not helped by how unimpressive the dynamics and especially the crescendos feel. But conversely, speaking of something that is not Dream Theater's strength at all, okay, look, it's a neat concept to explore sleep conditions like night terrors, sleepwalking, sleep paralysis, even the surreal elements that go beyond, but the actual lyrical poetry describing it feels only a half step removed from a lot of metal cliches and weirdly barren of any flavor or weirdness. When you're dealing with dreams and nightmares, that is your opportunity to cut loose with the wildest possible writing, and it just doesn't happen. Or in the case of the Shadow Man incident, the extended closing track running about 20 minutes, it just starts getting goofy and completely undercuts any sense of tension. And that's before we get all the wonky horns and the wild arpeggios on the guitars and pianos off the thicker bass in the final third of the song, where the playing is impressive, but the most apt word might be zany. It doesn't fit the tone, again. And thematically, it feels like Dream Theater was more interested in saying, hey, check out all this creepy shit that can happen when you fall asleep, rather than saying anything about it, going deeper, which feels a lot like leaving a lot of interesting ideas utterly undeveloped. Probably the best case scenario was Dead Asleep, where after the sleepwalking murder, the man gets away innocent but feels intensely guilty for the crime he committed against his family. Or, in the case of the one song where Portnoy contributed lyrics, throwing in a bunch of references to previous much better Dream Theater albums, which are cool Easter eggs at best, but questionable for any sort of immersion at worst. But at the end of the day, look, I didn't even come into this album with much in the way of expectations, and I still feel disappointed, and I don't think it's just me that's changed this time around. Yeah, I listen to more visceral and challenging metal now, whatever. And looking back on Dream Theater as a whole, they could occasionally be a little difficult to take seriously, speaking as a fan, but at their best, you absolutely still could take them seriously. The melodies and progressive construction and hooks and subject matter, they punch deeper. I went back to listen to a few of their classics from the 90s and 2000s. I think they hold up. Where I think the problem lies is that Portnoy's return feels like a half measure, that the talent and new ideas are there, but they don't feel fully explored because they need at least one more flashy solo or stylistic diversion that might fit within the grab bag of cool we can totally still play, but doesn't contribute to a stronger, more tonally consistent project. And ironically, when all the excess is flattened out, it's just nowhere near as memorable. I've seen some folks describe this as AI theater because of the album art, and that's a whole other can of worms. And while I don't like making that comparison when talking about music, I kind of find it lazy. When you have the broadly tagged signpost of what the band does well, inserted into a new thematic direction, seemingly because it's more cool than coherent, with enough visible degradations among the excess to feel uncanny, but not enough to feel organic or unique, especially compared to what's happened before. I mean, sadly, it's a more apt comparison than most. And like a lot in that space, you might remember the broad strokes, it might feel vaguely familiar, kinda cool, but Dream Theater's done this better. I don't hear this sticking the landing. At least for me. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. I know that said comments are probably going to be a minefield because, again, a lot of folks are really heralding this as Portnoy coming back, but the more listens I gave this, the less I was impressed and the more I just felt really tired, extremely disappointed. The AI art stuff, especially for the album art, that did get under my skin, but I gotta be honest, the music is the real problem here because it's just not tonally consistent, and again, they used to be able to pull that off. I don't know what the hell happened. Beyond that, though, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If y'all want to get involved in trying to get albums on my schedule for me to cover, or help support the channel, or just yell at me on my Discord, link to my Patreon and YouTube memberships are right over there. Don't feel obligated. Tough times, I understand. Just the options available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.